Welcome to Weather Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Welcome into Weathered Questions. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jan Kaj, and I am joined by co-host Kai O'Mara. We're so glad you guys found us again and came back for some fun weather talk with us this week. Just, hey, two meteorologists talking about what we love. We love talking about weather, and we're glad that you enjoy learning and discovering things along with us. It's October, Kai. Kind of crazy to think about.
I know it. We are almost done with 2025, if you think about it. And for those that are listening here in the upper Midwest, we've had some pretty warm temperatures first week of October, some of the warmest, especially during this stretch that we've had in a long, long time. So it kind of feels more like summerish at this time, and it's only about 10 weeks until the winter solstice. So that's almost even weirder to think about at that point. Yeah. And then we're just going to be done with 2025. So the year's definitely been going pretty quickly here, I would say, and people are starting to look ahead to various things. And by the way, thanks to everybody, thanks to the listeners, we have surpassed 1,000 downloads now. So
yes, it's
thanks
so
to
exciting.
Everybody for doing that and encouraging listeners to submit questions. We certainly want to know what's on your mind, and positive feedback, any sort of feedback. Leave a review, tell your friends and family.
Even
anything.
Not positive feedback, we're happy to have, because we're happy to improve. And Kai and I have heard it all. We've heard it all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the great part about this podcast is you can't see what either one of us are wearing, because I'm sure people would be all over us for that, too.
Yeah.
But we digress. So
I actually just started cleaning out my closet this week. I took like all of my TV dresses with me, like 70 plus dresses. I mean, an insane amount, right?
Man.
I know.
Wow.
But I'm starting to like clean out, because I don't need them anymore. And it's so refreshing to just be able to, wear what I want, where it makes me happy, and not have to feel like I have to fit anything else.
Yeah. I've still got the suits down here, but they don't come out very often. I had a suit come out for a deposition once, and that's been about it in about 3 years. So I've not had to worry much about that. My neighbor, though, he's very keen on wintertime. And he's always kind of curious about what we think could happen during the winter. And the official NOAA winter outlook will come out this month. But there's some old folklore out there, too. If the rice boils how many minutes, it's going to be a terrible winter. If the apples are falling too quick, or the acorns are fat, or something like that. But there's this one that has come around over and over and over and over again, Jan.
Yeah.
And here's the question. Can woolly bear caterpillars predict the winter ahead? What say you?
We seriously get this question all the time. You hear it all over the place. You see it all over social media, and people saying, "Oh, the woolly bears are out," and talking about their colors and their bands and what that means. Well, as the folklore goes, essentially, if they're kind of even, they're like black, brown, black, or I think it's black. Yeah, black's on the outside. That if they're even, it's going to be, kind of a moderate, even winter. But if there's more of that brown in the middle, that it's going to be more mild. And if there's more of that black, it's going to be a harsher winter. That's what the folklore says. I did a little research, because admittedly, as meteorologists, we do not base our forecasts off of the caterpillars, the woolly worms or woolly bears. So this was a new topic to me as well. Just understanding what exactly that folklore is and what it's based off of. And there are no real studies that say anything about this actually being true. A woolly bear's coloring comes from either its species. Again, did a little research myself. There's 250 species of this type of caterpillar from a tiger moth. So a lot of different bandings that way. And then also it comes from how old they are or what they're eating in preparation for the winter ahead. But it's not like the woolly bear has this all-knowing, way of saying like, oh, I better eat a bunch of this because it's going to be such a harsh winter or not. It's just what is around. So it's the climate that it's in. Maybe if it's been a drier summer or a wetter summer, that gives it different types of food that it can eat. And so that is impacting its coloring. So it's more about how things have been an indicator of the past than what is actually going to be coming up in the future. And that's how a lot of those things are, kind of like you just noted there, Kai, the acorns or the apples or whatever it is. It's more of an indication of the season that it's been growing in or growing up in versus what's going to come.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And we talked about this in previous episodes here of Weathered Questions about how El Nino and La Nina also play a big role in this. And it's not just the animals. I mean, I remember a couple of years back, we had a lot of people saying, well, it's going to be harsh. And it was harsh for about 2 weeks. And then it all pulled back. And that was the extent of that. So it's always very interesting to see it. Good for you for doing the research on that and finding that basically it's not a whole lot of conclusion. It's fun to talk about, and that's the other thing too, is it's not like anybody's trying to take the fun out of anything.
No.
I mean, Groundhog Day is one of the coolest things I think around, but let's be honest. Early spring is correct. 6 more weeks of winter is correct. Are you in Iowa or Texas?
Yeah.
It's going to be right no matter where you're at. And the fact that they flock over there every year to Punxsutawney, it's just Gobbler's Knob. It's just such a wild event. And I think that has to be just on my list 1 year to go out there and just see what happens.
It would be kind of cool. Like
that you have to go.
Exactly. As much as it is fun to quote unquote hate as a meteorologist, right? Like it would be fun to be part of the whole thing. And to your point there, I think with the woolly bears, with Punxsutawney Phil, with whatever, little bit of folklore or thing that you're, basing your prediction off of, or that you choose to believe, that you're going to see what you want to see, right? Like
exactly.
If the groundhog predicts summer, or if it predicts early spring, or if it predicts winter, or if the woolly bear predicts a harsh winter or a mild winter, like parts of that will be true at some point during that upcoming season or that stretch of time or whatever. And so then you can say, yep, it was right. Whereas other parts, it will not be right. And you could say that about just about anything, even when we're putting together actual climatological outlooks based on meteorology and climate. There are going to be days where there is warmer temperatures, even if it is predicted to be a cold winter. So as we're getting ready for that winter outlook to come out here this month, that's another good thing to keep in mind, is just because it says it's going to be warmer or wetter or colder or, whatever the variable is, there will always be a stretch of time that the other thing is happening. It's more as a blanket statement over the whole course of the season versus the entire season will be freezing cold or something like that.
It'll be cold and it'll snow a little bit. That's the guaranteed one right there.
All right, you heard it here first. Winter will have snow. Winter will be cold.
At some time, somewhere, it will snow.
Yes.
And it will get cold.
Yeah, exactly. So we're approaching, those cooler temperatures. As we started off Weathered Questions here earlier on this summer, we were getting some really good, healthy rainfall around the country, and especially here in the Midwest, where Kai and I are both situated. But then things kind of, started tapering off a little bit. And now we've started seeing things as far as hurricanes and stuff kind of ramping back up again. We talked last couple episodes about hurricane season ramping back up. Just recently, though, here at the end of September, we had a couple of hurricanes that were kind of playing around with each other a little bit and influencing each other. So, Kai, question coming in for this topic is, what happened with those hurricanes in the Atlantic at the end of September?
Well, it was something that we have learned about in theory, but it was not something I'd actually seen in practice before. And so what wound up happening is there were two hurricanes going on. So we had Hurricane Aaron a while ago. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with Aaron, but Aaron was a Category 5, curled to the north and back out to the east, and stayed over water the entire life cycle. Hurricane Umberto basically followed the exact same path, almost exact. Now, Umberto wound up getting up into the UK, just bringing some wind and some rain. But here was the weird part. There was a tropical circulation down near the Bahamas. And there were, a bunch of red, bold graphics of the Carolinas basically being decimated off the map. And yes, the operational models were in general agreement of getting what was eventually called Imelda up into South Carolina and North Carolina. The difference, though, in that is, depending on how things evolved, What hurricanes do is they steer away from high pressure and towards lower pressure. That's how they wind up getting their steering currents.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't just decide where they're going to go, and they don't have any fronts to really help drive them. It's the pressure field that has to drive them. And so as a result, Umberto turned into generally a Cat 5, slowed the progression of Umberto a little bit, and Imelda just decided, I'm not hardly going to go anywhere for about 24 hours, and Umberto caught up and literally swept her off her feet, if we want to use that analogy. And they didn't actually touch, but they were just close enough that Imelda had to take a right-hand turn when Umberto did and followed the lower pressure back out over the ocean. Imelda did hit Bermuda, though, and Bermuda had over 100-mile-an-hour winds. And you'd think, in an American city that 100 miles an hour is going to be a big deal, and in most cities it is. Bermuda is pretty hardy to this. They have some pretty good building codes out there for good reason because of where they're located. I mean, if there is a hurricane alley per se, they are in it. They get hit frequently. So they got by okay. But that's really kind of what happened there at the end of September. It was looking like, gosh, if these things actually move like it looks like, this thing might get into the Carolinas and stall for a while and, almost do a partial Hurricane Harvey kind of scenario where they sit and spin for a couple days and flood a bunch of people out. And that place was already hard hit by Helene. So we're actually really glad that didn't happen.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, that's how this thing evolves. And right now we're still waiting for U.S. landfall of any sort of hurricane. So we will see. I don't know if we ever made it a full season without one. I tend to think that nature likes to even herself out, but I also know that we're halfway through the alphabet. Mm-hmm. And just because they haven't hit anything doesn't mean hurricanes haven't happened. We've had 2 Cat 5s, both intensified pretty rapidly. So we'll see. But that's what happened there at the end of September. It was kind of a weird one to watch for sure.
Yeah, and that's important to keep in mind, right? Like just because they haven't been impacting land and cities maybe as much in the U.S. as normal up until this point, that they are still very much happening. They are still very much capable of continuing to happen. Hurricane season goes through the end of November. And so, continue to stay vigilant for that as we still have circulations kind of getting going in the Atlantic, even as we speak.
Oh, yeah. 2 of the big ones that I recall, Sandy back in 2012, that was an October storm. Mm-hmm. And that created some tremendous mountain snowfall, actually, too, that a lot of people don't talk about. I believe Wilma back in 2005 also happened kind of late in the year. And that was, I believe, a big one for the Cancun area, Yucatan Peninsula. So you can still get the big ones, especially with how hot that water is still. So
absolutely,
we'll just see. We'll see how it plays out. But, to your point, and we're going to get into this with our trivia question here, about just things getting a little bit drier overall. So when we look at the statistics, this is your trivia question here for today. Compared to August, most of the U.S. experiences how much precipitation in October? Is it A, about a quarter as much, B, about half as much, C, around a third as much, or is it D, the same amount? So again, compared to August, most of the U.S. experiences how much precipitation in October? A, a quarter of the amount, B, half as much, C, a third as much, or is it D, the exact same amount? So be thinking about that, bounce some ideas off of your neighbor, and let's just get to it here momentarily. But first, are you hungry? After more than 20 years of farmers market success, come on over to the Salsa Guy Cafe at 2874 Mount Vernon Road Southeast in Cedar Rapids. Some of the best salsa sandwiches and sauces that you'll ever consume. Open 11 to 7, Tuesday through Saturday. And with the second location now open on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids on Blair's Ferry Road, it is the Salsa Guy Cafe.
Today's trivia question.
All righty, thanks everyone. Hopefully you had an opportunity to think about that trivia answer today. We're talking about kind of the precipitation relationship between August and October. Is it a quarter of the amount, half as much, C, a third as much, or is it D, the same amount? What do we think? What do we think? Let's talk it out.
I mean, obviously fall starts getting drier, right? Like that's
right.
You would expect that. That's why planting seasons are the way they are and everything. So I would have to say coming into
not
this,
D.
yes, no, definitely not D. Definitely
not
not
the
deep.
same amount. So that rules it out to a quarter, a half, or a third.
Yeah, I would go a third or a half. Is
third
where
or
my
a
head would
half.
go. Yep.
All right. Well, and nobody can really see us at home right now, but the answer is here it comes. Half as much. Half as much.
Nice.
And that was option B. This is exactly what you said, Jan. Things get drier over time. And lately, the Midwest has had some really dry Septembers and Octobers too. But it's about half as much. Now, we use the word most of the United States.
Yep.
If you get hit by a hurricane, obviously that doesn't apply to you. If you have an extreme weather event, obviously it doesn't apply to you. But especially for Iowa and surrounding states, you tend to really see a pretty big pullback in terms of thunderstorm activity. And when we go into the fall, not that the ingredients aren't there, but if there are less frequent thunderstorms, there's traditionally less precipitation amounts. And typically in October, you don't tend to get a lot of snow, but I do caution that because people that might be listening to us up in Minneapolis say, wait a second, Halloween in 91. And those folks in Duluth might say, yeah, the year that we got 3 feet of snow before Halloween. Yeah, that can happen. But again, those are extreme events. And most of the time, you see pretty healthy drying here this time of year.
Yep. We are seeing some shifting in that, it seems, over the last couple of years, where we're getting kind of those drier, maybe mid to late summer time frames, and then it's getting wet again right as the farmers are hoping that things are really drying out and stuff. So it would be interesting to kind of see some new numbers and catch up on if there is actually truly a shift that way. But I think just personally, I have been observing that to some extent. But again, not to anything that's confounded in research there. But to that point, I was asked recently, it seems like we've hardly had any rain here in August and September. Why is that?
Yeah, in fact, just this past weekend, I was watching our yard, and it's been about 3.5 weeks since I've cut it. And in October, typically it's the last cut for me, and I usually wait for a frost, and I say, to heck with it, we're done. So I just kind of mowed around the edges this weekend, but most of the yard didn't need anything. In the sunny areas, it was just fried.
Yeah, I had to. Our yard is just brown. Like it does not look good. I do not believe in watering my lawn. If nature does what nature does, but the weeds are thriving.
Yeah.
So I had to go pull all the foxtail weeds out of but the grass itself. Agreed. I don't know the last time we mowed. It's probably been a month.
Yeah, probably. Well, and you probably just have one more to go because, even this next week to 10 days doesn't look overly wet for the Midwest areas. But what's interesting is there may be a tropical connection to this question. At least I've believed that in the past. Sometimes we get floods in August, so it doesn't always work out. But it seems like we've had hardly any rain in August and September. And I think it's just the way that the tropical season has unfolded and the way that these storms have shifted to the east and north just before making landfall to the U.S. So if you were to take the United States and the Atlantic Ocean, right? The Atlantic Ocean is to the east, off to the right. If you're visualizing this while you're driving, please be careful. Keep your eye on the road. But the lower 48's to the left, Atlantic is off to the right. If the hurricanes are coming close to the U.S., like Erin, Umberto, and Imelda did, there's probably a high over the ocean. And there is. It's called the Bermuda High that exists. And if there is a steering to these systems that are pulling it north and east, that means there's probably what we call a trough of low pressure close to the northeast U.S., which logically means there might be a ridge of high pressure to the west that's more semi-permanent. And sure enough, it's been pretty dry. And September, with the exception of the first 4 days, was a hot month.
Yeah.
And it was hot and it didn't change much. We didn't have a whole lot of big sweeping cold fronts, despite the modeling thinking that we could. So I wonder if that's part of it here, that August into September has had that issue. August, however, is almost a bit of a drier month too, because you got another thing going on, which would be another low pressure trough to the west coast, which is the desert southwest monsoon. So the monsoon season in the desert southwest plus the hurricanes may have made it so we missed out. I know a lot of folks are saying it seems like it's going all around us. It's splitting. And I think that's probably why it was doing that. I don't know for sure, but that's where I would place my money right now on a pretty good explanation of the long term and why that's been the way it is.
And regardless of what specific factor is steering that, if whether it's, tropics or the monsoon season or both, or a combination of everything, right? It is the big, large scale picture of high pressure and low pressure systems around the US that essentially one thing can't move forward and one thing blocks the other one from moving. And because of where that's situated, parts of the country will get decent precipitation, or, expected regular precipitation, maybe even on the higher side sometimes, while others are, when that feast or famine situations, right? Where others will just not be getting anything. And right now we're under that drier part.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to put a little bit in here before we get to our next topic, the only reason I had suggested tropical maybe playing a role is 2005, really, really active hurricane season. At the time, it was the most active on record. And the Midwest went into a huge drought, especially towards the back half of fall. We saw that again in 2012, and then we saw that again in 2020, which was a weird year. That was the big Iowa derecho year. But recall, we had 3 to 4 weeks of dry weather directly after that event in Iowa, and then it got dry after that, going into the wintertime. So I believe 2020, maybe it was 2021, one of those two, Louisiana got hit by 6 tropical cyclones in 1 year. 6. And you have to wonder if that kind of shuts the process down and just can't get that moisture up here. So I've seen it a number of times. I just couldn't help but think, the way the water and the atmosphere is all conserved around the world, if everybody's sucking it up over here, we're kind of left out to dry, literally.
Yeah.
That's what I think, at least. Yeah. So with that, let's say this. We're finally getting a cold front this week. It's finally going to feel like the season, which is about time. Nobody should be running their AC in October. I'm sorry.
Crockpot weather, sweater weather. We're ready for it.
Yes, it's coming. In fact, this past Monday, we had ourselves a really, really nice, cooler and cloudy day with some showers. So the fall feel is in the area. Winter alerts have come up in parts of the country. Is this the end of the warmth? You think it might be back? What do you think, Jan?
I mean, that's always the question, right? This time of year, whatever you want to call it, as we're getting into September, October, is that first time you get cooler weather. Everyone's like, great, this is it. We're going into fall. And we did have a little bit of that at the kind of end of August, early September. But clearly that did not stick. We came back to warmth as we expected we would. But the long and short of, is this the end of the warmth? Being early October is, it's not necessarily the time of the year, the exact weather pattern or anything. Like, it's just back to those high pressures and low pressures and everything moving around. It just is what it is. It is where everything is going to, move around and allow different, if the wind can come back up out of the south, then we can really easily warm up. You may have noticed, at least around Iowa and in the Midwest this weekend, it was kind of windy, and it was also very warm. That's because that wind out of the south was bringing up all that warmth into our area and helping keep things warm. So, it really is just kind of tough to say. Is this the end? It very well could be. But there's no promise that we're not going to get another warm day or two. In fact, looking ahead, those longer term models do suggest that we probably will get back up into those, mid to upper 70s at least, if not maybe slightly warmer yet again. We're not just going to dive into the 50s and 60s and stay there forever. Even though there are quite a few freeze warnings out across the Dakotas at this point that I'm seeing, and some freeze watches and stuff as you head back up into the mountains in Wyoming. So yes, we're starting to get towards winter. It is October. That's no surprise, but there's no guarantee that we're not going to still get some warmer days as we might expect. We could have snow on Halloween. We could also have some very warm temperatures. I've had both. Plan the Halloween costume accordingly.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is we just don't know yet. But at the same time, I would agree with you that, whatever your definition of warmth may be, it's been so dry. And as long as it's dry and the sun is out and there's a bit of a breeze, we're popping easily back into the 60s again, if not higher, maybe 70s. But keep in mind, the normal high this time of year in the Midwest in October, it starts to plummet pretty quickly. And I mean, we lose a lot of daylight. We can get snow this time of year, but the one thing I did take a look at here, almost everybody west of the Rockies is in some sort of drought. Almost everybody east of Iowa is in some sort of drought. And we're starting to see some splotches of abnormally dry showing up, even back into Wisconsin, Minnesota, even parts of Iowa again, even some severe drought back up into Michigan. So there are splotches of really dry ground around, and that's going to be key too, because if you don't have any snow and the ground is dry in November, who says you can't pop a 65-degree afternoon, even if the sun is coming up, almost at 8 o'clock or whatever it might be, though I guess we fall back. So it'd be more like the sun is setting at 5:30 or 5:45 and you just got done with a t-shirt and shorts day, Yep. So it's all possible, but now we're not to permanent fall yet. You have to think that this is another false start, probably.
Exactly.
It'll bounce back. Yeah, for sure. All righty. Well, this takes you to another end of yet another episode of Weathered Questions. We thank you for sticking around here for this 25-minute discussion all about weather and all about these questions. We want to encourage you to submit your own questions. We want to know what's on your radar. You can email us your questions to weatheredquestions@gmail.com to join the conversation. Until next time, stay safe.